"Objection!" Donovan's attorney shouted, panic cracking his voice. "She can't do that. This is a high-end commercial zone." "I absolutely can," Megan shot back. The December cold in Pennsylvania's Rust Belt did not stop at the skin. It felt like icy needles stabbing straight into the marrow of the bones. The outdoor temperature had plunged to -5 degrees Fahrenheit, -20 degrees Celsius, and the wind screamed through the cracks of the old wooden house, producing eerie, ghost-like whistles. In the dimly lit kitchen, Megan Jenkins's breath came out in cloudy white plumes every time she sighed. The 38-year-old woman, her hands cracked and raw from restaurant cleaning chemicals, turned a glass mason jar upside down onto the chipped oak table. Clink, clink, coins spilled out. Megan carefully counted each one. 1 quarter, 25 cents, 2 dimes, 10 cents, and a handful of dull brown pennies, 1 cent. $14.37, she murmured hoarsely. That amount was only enough to buy about 2 gallons of heating oil at the gas station at the end of the road. With the broken old furnace in the basement, it would be just enough to keep the house's water pipes from freezing solid for less than 12 more hours. Megan pulled her thick wool coat tighter around herself and looked around her kingdom. It was an old Victorian-style house, about 1,200 square feet, the only inheritance her grandfather had left behind. But now it looked like a shipwreck, stranded alone in a sea of concrete. Surrounding her modest wooden home were towering corrugated metal fences stamped with a cold blue logo, Donovan Estates. Massive cranes stretched into the gray sky like steel monsters poised to devour the last remaining scrap of living space. The constant roar of drills, the beeping of reversing heavy trucks, and the thunder of hydraulic hammers shook the framed photos on Megan's walls day and night. "Buster, come here," Megan called softly. Buster, an old mixed-breed golden retriever with patches of missing fur, whimpered as he crawled out from under the table, pressing his large head against her leg for warmth. He was her only companion left. Just then, a dry, sharp sound echoed from the mail slot in the front door. The mail carrier had come and gone, leaving behind a thick envelope lying alone on the cold floor. It was not a Christmas card. The envelope was stark white, stamped in glaring red letters at the top right corner, "Final Notice" and "County Treasurer." Her heart tightened. She tore the envelope open with trembling hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a bold, all-caps title, "Notice of Foreclosure." Her eyes skimmed over the dry legal language, then froze on the number that made her go numb. Total outstanding property tax debt, $15,420.50. "What the hell is this?" Megan gasped, her voice breaking. "I gave Wayne the money to pay the taxes every month." The memory hit her like a slap. Wayne, her ex-husband, divorced 6 months ago. He had always insisted on controlling the finances, always saying, "You just focus on working, leave the tax paperwork to me. What do you know about the law anyway?" For 3 years, he had taken her money and paid not a single cent of property tax to the county. He had intercepted every warning letter before she ever saw them. The final line at the bottom of the page read like a death sentence. The property owner has 72 hours to pay the full outstanding balance. Failure to comply will result in enforcement by the sheriff, including eviction and public auction of the property on Tuesday morning. 72 hours. $15,000. And she had less than $15 in her pocket. Outside, the excavators at the Donovan construction site roared again, shaking the floor beneath her feet, as if the monster itself was laughing at the desperation of this lone woman. Less than 30 minutes after Megan found the foreclosure notice, an unfamiliar sound shattered the gloomy silence of the winter morning. It was not the usual noise of excavators or bulldozers, but the soft crunch of rubber tires rolling smoothly over thick snow. A glossy black Cadillac Escalade, massive like a stalking predator, slowly pulled up in front of the rotting wooden fence of Megan's house. The door opened, and warm air from the vehicle's heating system poured out in a white cloud, sharply contrasting with the biting cold outside. Stepping out was Mr. Donovan, CEO of Donovan Estates. He wore a charcoal-colored cashmere overcoat, a silk scarf around his neck, and pristine Italian leather shoes without a speck of dirt. Donovan walked up onto the porch without knocking, merely clearing his throat. Megan opened the door, still clutching the crumpled legal notice, while Buster growled softly behind her. "Ms. Jenkins," Donovan said, his voice slick and artificial, like a used car salesman. "I just heard some unfortunate news from the county clerk's office. Such a shame about your tax situation." Without waiting for an invitation, he leaned against the door frame, his eyes sweeping quickly over the poor interior before settling on Megan's gaunt face. "Let's be realistic, Megan. You don't have $15,000. You can't even afford to fix this porch before it collapses." Donovan pulled a leather checkbook from his inner coat pocket. "But I'm a reasonable man. I'm willing to help you out of this mess. I'll buy this house right now for $20,000 cash. You pay off the taxes, and you'll still have a few thousand left to rent a small apartment and start over." Heat rushed to Megan's face. She knew exactly how valuable this land was. Maple Street was heating up by the day. The surrounding lots had sold for $500,000 to fuel his plans to expand a shopping complex. He wanted to flatten her home just to turn it into a paved parking lot. $20,000? Megan let out a harsh laugh, her voice trembling with anger. "You know damn well this land is worth 20 times that. This is the house my grandfather built with his own hands. This is where my mother died. It is not a clearance item in your supermarket." Donovan's smile vanished, his face turning icy. "This is America, Ms. Jenkins. Value doesn't come from memories, it comes from leverage, and you have none. You're just a small fish stranded on dry land." He stepped closer, lowering his voice into a threat. "You have 72 hours. If you don't sell to me, the sheriff will throw you out and auction the place off. I'll buy it from the bank for pennies, and you'll walk away with nothing. Think very carefully." Megan slammed the door shut inches from his face. The crack of wood echoed sharply, but she knew Donovan was right about one thing. The clock was ticking, and she was standing at the edge of a cliff. Night fell quickly, swallowing the desolate stretch of Maple Street. The temperature inside the house continued to drop. Megan curled up on the old sofa, her numb hands rubbing together desperately for warmth. Her firm refusal to Donovan earlier was now being slowly eroded by the cold. She began to wonder whether pride could keep her warm through the night. Suddenly, blinding headlights swept across the living room windows, accompanied by the distinctive growl of a V6 twin-turbo engine. Megan squinted toward the sound. A brand-new Ford F-150 Raptor, deep red in color, its massive off-road tires climbing arrogantly onto the snow-covered curb, had arrived. The door flew open, and Wayne stepped out. Her ex-husband looked nothing like the unemployed, debt-ridden man from 6 months ago. He wore a thick Carhartt jacket, brand-new Timberland boots, and casually spun a shiny set of keys in his hand. He radiated the well-fed, smug confidence of a man who had just hit the jackpot. Wayne pushed the door open and walked inside, bringing with him the stench of cheap cologne and the cold air from outside. He looked around the dark room and clicked his tongue. "Jesus, Meg, it's freezing in here. Are you planning to die of hypothermia before the cops come to kick you out?" Megan didn't stand up. She only looked at him with exhausted eyes. "Why are you here, Wayne? To laugh at me?" "I'm here to save you, idiot." Wayne pulled a stool closer, his voice dropping into a tone of concern and sincerity. "I ran into Donovan at the bar. He told me about your offer. Meg, listen to me. I know you love this house, but you can't fight people like that. They're sharks, and we're just bait." He leaned forward and grabbed Megan's ice-cold hands. "Sell it. $20,000 is a good deal in this situation. You pay off the taxes, and I'll help you find a studio apartment on the other side of town. I know a few realtors. I don't want to see you on the street." Wayne's words sounded strangely smooth and reasonable. Megan's resistance weakened under hunger and bone-deep cold. She searched his eyes, looking for any trace of the affection left from their 10-year marriage. Maybe he was right. Maybe he truly wanted to help her one last time. She was too tired to keep fighting alone. "You'll really help me?" Megan asked weakly. Wayne nodded firmly, a reassuring smile tugging at his lips. "Of course, we were a family once. I'll bring the paperwork tomorrow morning. Once you sign, this nightmare will be over." Megan closed her eyes and slowly nodded. She had no idea she had just stepped straight into a trap that had already been set. The next morning, Wayne returned just as the sun was peeking out from behind the gray high-rise buildings. He brought with him 2 steaming cups of Starbucks coffee and a thick folder of documents tucked under his arm. "Drink this to warm up, Meg," Wayne said, setting the coffee down on the table as he quickly flipped the folder open in front of her. "I had a lawyer draft everything last night. It's all standard procedure. Just sign where the X is marked, and I'll drive you to the bank to pick up the cash." Megan picked up the ballpoint pen, her hand still trembling from the early morning cold. She was about to sign and end everything, but the habit of caution she had learned from her grandfather made her pause. Her eyes drifted down to the tiny fine print at the bottom of page 4, the section labeled Additional Clauses. She squinted and carefully read Clause 14B. "The seller, Megan Jenkins, shall bear full responsibility for the payment of all outstanding property tax liabilities." Megan froze. She did the math quickly in her head. Sale price, $20,000. Back taxes and penalties, over $15,000. After transfer fees and notarization costs, she would be left with less than $3,000. Not enough even for the security deposit on the worst apartment in town, let alone to start a new life. She snapped her head up and stared out the window at the glossy Ford Raptor parked outside. The temporary registration tag on the windshield was still brand new. A truck like that cost at least $70,000. Where would an unemployed man like Wayne get that kind of money? "You took his money, didn't you?" Megan asked, her voice ice cold, laced with danger. Wayne blinked, his fake smile stiffening. "What are you talking about?" "You didn't just forget to pay the taxes." Megan stood up and threw the folder straight at his face. "You deliberately didn't pay them to corner me. And that truck, that's Donovan's commission to you for tricking me into selling my house for nothing, isn't it?" Exposed, Wayne dropped the mask of decency. He jumped to his feet, knocking the coffee cup onto the floor. "You think you're smart, you Donovan," he shouted. "You were going to lose the house anyway. Why shouldn't I make something out of it? Sign it now, you stupid bitch." He lunged forward, trying to grab her hand and force her to sign. But Megan was faster. She stepped back, reached up to the gun rack above the fireplace and grabbed her grandfather's old Remington 870 shotgun. Clack, clack. The dry, metallic sound of the pump echoed through the small room. The chamber was empty, but the unmistakable sound of steel sliding against steel was enough to make any American man hesitate. "Get out of my house," Megan roared, the dark barrel pointed straight at Wayne's chest. "Get out now before I blow your brand new truck to pieces." Wayne turned pale, raising both hands as he backed toward the door. "You're crazy, Meg. You're completely crazy. You're going to rot and die in this shithole." He bolted for his truck, slammed the gas, and sped away, leaving Megan standing alone in the wrecked room. Her hand shook as she lowered the gun, tears spilling from her eyes, not from despair, but from rage. She was no longer broken. This filthy betrayal had ignited a fire of hatred inside her. The real war had just begun. Less than 2 hours after Wayne was driven away, Donovan's retaliation arrived, fast and brutal, like a snowstorm. Outside the fence, a massive yellow Caterpillar excavator suddenly swung its bucket and accidentally slammed it into the sidewalk right next to the utility pole feeding Megan's house. A sharp crack exploded, followed by sparks spraying wildly across the white snow. Inside the house, the ceiling lights went dead. The oil furnace rumbling in the basement abruptly fell silent. The house sank into a terrifying quiet, broken only by the wind screaming through the gaps. Megan rushed to the light switch, flipping it on and off in vain. She grabbed her phone and called PPL Electric. On the other end, the dispatcher's voice was flat and emotionless, like a pre-programmed machine. Ms. Jenkins, we've received an incident report from the Donovan Estates construction crew. An unfortunate accident severed an underground power line. Due to blizzard conditions, our repair team can access the site in approximately 3 to 5 business days. 3 to 5 days, Megan screamed. It'll be minus 10 degrees tonight. Are you trying to kill me? We're very sorry, ma'am. That is procedure. The line went dead. At the same time, the kitchen faucet began to sputter, and then stopped completely. The main water line had also been accidentally broken. Donovan didn't just want to buy the house, he wanted to turn it into an icy tomb, forcing her to flee to save her life. He was executing the most ruthless strategy in real estate, constructive eviction combined with backroom lobbying at City Hall to invoke eminent domain, rebranding his commercial project as a public benefit to legally crush her. By nightfall, the Victorian house had become a massive freezer. Wrapped in 3 layers of wool blankets, Megan went into the backyard with a small shovel, hauling in chunks of snow mixed with dirt. By the flickering light of the wood-burning stove, her only remaining source of heat, Megan dumped the snow into an old cast-iron pot and boiled it for drinking water. She looked at Buster, shivering and curled up beside the stove, then at the cloudy snow water steaming in the pot. Donovan thought cutting the power and water would break her, but he was wrong. As she watched the flames lick the bottom of the pot, there was no fear in Megan's eyes. Comfort was gone. Only raw survival instinct remained. She would not freeze to death, and she would not leave. 2 a.m. Just as Megan slipped into a shallow, exhausted sleep beside the dying fire, the outside world erupted. Thunk, thunk, thunk. A series of heavy circuit breakers slammed shut. Instantly, 4 10,000-watt halogen floodlights erected around the construction fence blazed to life. The blinding white beams, as intense as stadium lighting, tore through the darkness and shot straight into Megan's bedroom and living room windows. Even with the curtains drawn and newspapers taped to the glass, the light forced its way in, turning the dark house into a glowing display box, leaving her nowhere to hide. Before she could recover, the sound assault began. A massive speaker system was set up right along the property line by Donovan's security team, large men in black uniforms labeled Tactical Response. Heavy metal music exploded from the speakers, pounding drums and screaming electric guitars, howling like chainsaws. The volume was cranked up to 100 decibels, equivalent to a jet engine taking off right next to her ears. Boom, boom, boom. The wooden house shook violently with each bass hit. Glasses rattled off the table and shattered on the floor. Buster panicked, crawling under the bed and barking frantically. Megan clutched her ears, her head splitting with pain. This was a classic psyop, psychological warfare used by the military to break enemy will, sleep deprivation. She grabbed her phone and sobbed into a 911 call. "Please, they're torturing me. The noise is unbearable." 20 minutes later, a sheriff's deputy arrived. The moment the patrol lights appeared in the distance, the music cut off. The floodlights were dimmed down to a legal construction lighting level. The deputy stepped out, looking irritated as he studied Megan's shaking body and dark-circled eyes. "Ma'am, we don't hear any music. Our sound meter only detects generator noise within legal limits. They have permits for overnight construction." "But they just turned it off. They're shining lights straight into my bed," screamed Megan. The deputy shrugged and pointed toward the guards standing with crossed arms, smirking in the shadows. "That's their property, Miss Jenkins. They have the right to use lights for security. If you make another false emergency call, I'll have to cite you for disturbing the peace." The patrol car drove away. Immediately, the heavy metal roared back to life, and the floodlights surged to full power again. Megan collapsed onto the floor, covering her ears, finally understanding a brutal truth. The law has gray zones, and rich men like Donovan know how to buy VIP access to them. She was nothing more than prey trapped in a cage, waiting to go mad. 3:17 a.m. The rock music still screamed as if trying to tear her eardrums apart, and the floodlights still burned as bright as daylight. Megan sat on the freezing floor, staring at the screen of her iPhone 8, one corner of the glass shattered. She had cried until there were no tears left. The fear had crystallized into something sharper and harder, rage. She did not call the police again. She opened TikTok, tapped the plus sign, and selected Live. Megan stepped onto the porch. The -5-degree Fahrenheit wind whipped across her face, but she did not shiver. She raised the phone, aiming the camera at the security fence where the guards were laughing and at the massive speakers vibrating violently. "Hello, America," Megan said, her voice eerily calm, completely at odds with the chaos around her. "My name is Megan Jenkins. It is 3 a.m. in Pennsylvania. Can you hear this noise? This is how Mr. Donovan, CEO of Donovan Estates, lulls a widowed woman to sleep so he can steal her home." She turned the camera inside, showing the pot of melting snow on the stove, the fraudulent foreclosure notice, and the fraudulent contract bearing Wayne's signature, now crumpled. "They cut my electricity, they cut my water. My ex-husband tricked me into carrying $15,000 in tax debt to force me to sell my grandfather's legacy for pennies. The police say this is a civil dispute. But look at me." She shoved the camera close to her hollow face, dark-eyed and burning. "This is not business. This is murder. I am standing at 42 Maple Street. I am alone, with one old dog and a gun with no bullets. But I swear to you, I will not leave. If you don't see me live streaming tomorrow morning, it means they won." Megan ended the video with a single sentence. "Don't just watch. Help me show the world who they really are." She hit post. At first, only a handful of viewers trickled in. Then TikTok's algorithm caught the raw, unfiltered drama. The images of brutal oppression by the wealthy against a poor woman struck the most sensitive nerve in American society. Within an hour, views surged from hundreds to 1 million, then 1 million. The video spread explosively to Twitter, X, and Facebook. The hashtags Stand with Megan and Boycott Donovan climbed to #1 trending in the United States. America was waking up, and all eyes were turning toward the small wooden house on Maple Street, burning with collective outrage. As the icy dawn broke over Maple Street, Megan braced herself for another day from hell. But strangely, the heavy metal music was gone. In its place came a different thunderous sound, the synchronized roar of dozens of V-twin engines from Harley-Davidson motorcycles. Megan cracked the door open and looked outside. She couldn't believe her eyes. Along the chain-link fence Donovan had erected, a group of more than 50 men and women in leather vests had parked their bikes in a solid steel line, forming a human barrier between her house and Donovan's security team. On the backs of their vests were embroidered logos reading Veterans of Foreign Wars and Patriot Riders. Large American flags mounted behind the seats whipped violently in the snowy wind. A silver-bearded man wearing a baseball cap that read Vietnam Veteran stepped forward to face Donovan's hired guards. He pointed straight at the security captain, his voice sharp and commanding. "Turn that damn speaker off, son. On our watch, nobody gets to bully a woman or trespass on a citizen's home. And if you want to play the floodlight game, we've got a few military-grade lights here that shine a hell of a lot brighter than yours." The private security guards, used to only intimidating the weak, visibly shrank under the presence of real soldiers. Silently, they shut down the generators and retreated back into the construction site. Megan stepped onto the porch, her tears streaming down her face. The old veteran saw her and raised his hand in a military salute. "Good morning, Miss Jenkins. We saw your video. Don't worry, you're not alone." Across the street, vans from local TV stations and CNN began pulling in and parking. A young reporter ran up to Megan, holding out an iPad. "Miss Jenkins, have you seen this?" On the screen was a GoFundMe page titled Save Megan's Home, Justice for Maple Street. The donation bar had blown past its goal long ago and was still climbing. $108,450 raised of $15,000 goal. Over $100,000. "All of this money is yours," the reporter said quickly. "Public outrage is exploding. Renowned attorney Robert Shapiro from New York just tweeted that he's willing to represent you pro bono." At the same moment, in the glass office atop the Donovan Tower, the atmosphere was razor tight. Mr. Donovan stared at the television broadcasting images of protesters surrounding his construction site. The phone on his desk rang nonstop, investors and board members calling in panic. Donovan Estates stock had dropped 12% within minutes of the market opening. Megan clenched her phone, feeling the weight of hope settle into her hands. She had the money to pay the taxes, she had a lawyer, and most importantly, she had an army standing behind her. She turned and looked at Buster's freshly covered grave, whispering softly, "We're going to win, old boy." At exactly 2 p.m., less than 20 hours before the foreclosure deadline, Megan walked into the local Wells Fargo branch with her head held high. Outside, a few reporters and supporters waved and cheered for her. The GoFundMe money had already landed in her account, over $100,000, more than enough to write a cashier's check to pay the full tax debt and throw it straight in Donovan's face. She placed her ID on the cold marble counter. "I'd like to withdraw $16,000 as a cashier's check payable to the county treasurer." The teller smiled and typed rapidly. Then the smile vanished. She frowned, typed again, and whispered to the branch manager standing behind her. The manager stepped forward, his expression apologetic. "Miss Jenkins, I'm very sorry. We can't process this transaction." "What?" Megan's heart skipped. "The money's already in my account. I checked it on the app." "The funds are there, ma'am, but the entire account has been—" The manager slid a still warm fax under the glass partition. Megan picked it up, her hands shaking violently. It was a temporary financial restraining order. Plaintiff, Wayne Jenkins. Her phone buzzed. It was the New York attorney, his voice urgent and helpless. Megan, I'm so sorry. Wayne just filed an emergency motion. He's arguing that the divorce hasn't reached a final ruling on asset division. He claims the donations were raised based on a shared marital story, so he's entitled to 50%. The judge, one I strongly suspect has ties to Donovan, approved freezing the funds to protect disputed interests until a hearing next month. Next month? Megan screamed in the middle of the bank lobby, ignoring the stares around her. The sheriff comes tomorrow morning. If I don't pay before 9 a.m., I lose my house. That's exactly the point, the lawyer said quietly. They don't need to win the money case. They only need to stop you from using the funds for the next 24 hours. It's a filthy move, but it's legal. Megan's arms fell limp. The court order slipped from her fingers and fluttered to the floor. $100,000 sat right there on the screen, visible and untouchable. Wayne and Donovan had turned her life raft into an anchor, dragging her toward the bottom. A text message popped up from an unknown number, just 3 words: sell or lose. The fragile hope that had just ignited was snuffed out instantly, replaced by a darker despair than ever before. The legal system she trusted had turned around and sunk its teeth into her. 11 p.m. Only 10 hours remained until the eviction deadline. The wooden house was swallowed by thick darkness, cold as a tomb. Megan sat motionless, drained of both tears and hope. Suddenly, Buster, the old dog curled at her feet, sprang up. The fur along his spine bristled, a low, threatening growl rumbling from his throat. Outside the shattered window, the shadows of large, unmuzzled pit bulls darted back and forth across the yard. They were the guard dogs Donovan's security team had just accidentally let loose. Woof! Woof! Buster barked furiously and charged toward the half-rotted wooden door. "No! Buster, come back!" Megan screamed, rushing after him. But the old dog's instinct to protect his home and his owner was stronger than anything else. Buster slammed through the door and ran into the snowy darkness to confront the intruders. Instantly, savage barking erupted, mixed with feral growls and the sickening sound of bodies colliding. Megan grabbed a flashlight and a baseball bat and ran into the yard. "Get out! Get out now!" she screamed, waving the light wildly. The beam revealed a nightmare. 3 massive pit bulls were tearing into Buster. Startled by the light, the human shouting, and a sharp whistle signaling retreat from somewhere in the distance, the dogs released him and vanished into the night. Megan dropped the bat and collapsed to her knees in blood-soaked snow. Buster lay there, his breathing ragged and broken, his eyes dim as he looked at her one last time. He gently licked her trembling hand, his tail giving a single weak wag, and then he was gone. The police arrived 15 minutes later. It was the same deputy as before. He shined his flashlight over Buster's body and scribbled lazily in his notebook. "Unfortunate accident. Looks like stray dogs from the woods wandered in looking for food. No evidence connecting this to Mr. Donovan. This falls under animal control, not a criminal matter." He left, abandoning Megan alone with the cold body of her only companion. Extreme pain does not scream. Megan stood up, her face blank, carved from stone. She carried a heavy iron shovel to the old oak tree in the backyard, the place where her grandfather used to sit and tell stories. Clang, clang. The shovel struck the frozen ground with a brutal sound. Blow after blow, Megan dug Buster's grave. She no longer felt the cold. The agony in her chest had frozen solid, transforming into a sharp, merciless core of hatred. Donovan had taken her home. He had taken her dignity, and now he had killed the last of her family. He wanted war. She would give him war. 2 a.m. The snow began to fall heavier, blanketing the old blanket Megan had used to wrap Buster's body in pure white. The hole beneath the old oak tree was now about 3 feet deep. Megan's hands were numb, blistered and bleeding from the friction against the freezing shovel handle, yet she kept digging mechanically, hollow, without emotion. Clang! The shovel blade struck something hard, producing a sharp metallic sound, clean and ringing, completely different from the dull thud of rocks and soil. Megan froze. She dropped to her knees and brushed away the thick, black, muddy earth with her bare hands. Under the flickering beam of her flashlight, a rectangular metal box slowly emerged, an old military ammunition box from World War I. Most of its olive green paint had peeled away, eaten by rust. Her heart pounded as she strained to pull the box out of the hole. A memory surfaced, her grandfather's words during his confused old age. "I buried the Jenkins family safeguard under the oak tree, Megan. When you're truly at the end of the road, go find it." Back then, she had assumed he meant a few old silver coins or sentimental keepsakes. Megan used the tip of the shovel to pry open the rusted latch. Crack! The lid sprang open. There was no gold, no silver. Inside lay a bundle of documents carefully wrapped in 3 layers of waterproof wax paper and a brass document tube. A musty, moldy paper smell rushed up. Trembling, Megan opened the file beneath the weak flashlight beam. It was a yellowed legal document, handwritten in neat but still legible ink, dated May 14th, 1925. The title read, "Deed of Severed Mineral Estate." Megan squinted as she read. The legal knowledge she had painfully taught herself during her divorce helped her grasp its meaning instantly. Her great-grandfather had sold most of the farmland, now Donovan's development site, to pay off debts, but he had wisely inserted a special clause. The grantor hereby permanently and exclusively retains all rights to own, explore, and extract any and all resources located below a depth of 500 feet from the surface. She opened the brass tube. Inside was a hand-drawn geological map marked with long red cross-hatched lines running from beneath her house and stretching across the entire surrounding area. A handwritten note read, "Marcellus Shale Formation, High Gas Concentration." Megan went still. Pennsylvania was the heartland of shale gas. State law separated surface rights from mineral rights. Donovan had purchased every inch of surface land to build his shopping complex, but in his arrogance and haste, he had failed to check who owned the hell beneath it. Megan looked toward Donovan's gleaming glass building rising in the distance, then back down at the papers in her hands. The pain of losing Buster, the humiliation of being deceived by Wayne, all of it suddenly dissolved, replaced by a terrifying calm. She hadn't just found a piece of paper. She had just uncovered a legal nuclear weapon. The sky began to pale. Megan carefully tucked the documents into her bra, filled the grave, and buried Buster for the last time. She stood, brushed snow from her shoulders, and fixed her burning gaze toward the county courthouse. This morning's hearing would not be her funeral. It would be Donovan's grave. 9 a.m. Courtroom number 4 of the county courthouse was packed. On the left, Donovan Estates' legal team occupied the first 2 rows, 6 attorneys in Armani suits, crocodile leather briefcases at their feet, faces brimming with confidence like vultures scenting a corpse. Seated among them were Mr. Donovan and Wayne, whispering and snickering. Across the aisle, Megan sat alone at the defendant's table. She wore an old black outfit, her hair neatly tied back. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but her gaze was sharp, no trace of the panic she had shown days before. There was no briefcase on the table in front of her, only the rusted metal box. "All rise," the court clerk announced as Judge Miller, known for his close ties to the business elite, entered the room. The gavel struck. Case number 402, County Bank versus Megan Jenkins, regarding foreclosure due to unpaid property taxes. Is the plaintiff present? Donovan's lead attorney stood. "Your Honor, my client, Mr. Donovan, purchased the outstanding tax lien from the bank this morning. We request immediate enforcement of eviction to proceed with site clearance." The judge turned to Megan, his tone weary and detached. "Ms. Jenkins, do you have legal representation? Do you have $15,420 to pay the debt right now?" The courtroom fell silent. Wayne smirked, waiting for the moment Megan would collapse and beg. Megan slowly stood. She did not look at the judge. She looked straight at Donovan. "Your Honor," her voice rang clear, "I do not have the money. My bank accounts have been unlawfully frozen by my ex-husband. Therefore, I accept the loss." A murmur rippled through the room. Donovan exhaled in relief and adjusted his tie. "I agree to sign over ownership of the house at 42 Maple Street and all surface land rights to Mr. Donovan," Megan continued, opening the metal box. "However, before you strike the gavel, there is one matter of property law that must be clarified." She removed the yellowed 1925 deed and the geological map, holding them high. Under Pennsylvania property law, surface ownership and mineral ownership are two separate legal estates. In 1925, my great-grandfather sold the surface land but retained— Megan stepped away from her table and walked straight toward Donovan, slamming the document down in front of him. "You bought my land, Mr. Donovan, but you forgot to buy what lies beneath it, and according to this geological survey, directly under the foundation of your luxury shopping center is a high-yield shale gas deposit." Donovan's face drained of color, his smile vanished, his legal team scrambled, huddling around the ancient document. Megan turned back to the judge and delivered the killing blow. "Your Honor, as the lawful owner of the mineral estate, I possess the constitutional right under state law to access and extract my property. I hereby notify the court that I have signed a preliminary agreement with Chesapeake Energy. We will install a hydraulic fracturing rig at this exact location." She pointed to Donovan's development blueprint, "right in the middle of the main plaza fountain." "Objection!" Donovan's attorney shouted, panic cracking his voice. "She can't do that. This is a high-end commercial zone." "I absolutely can," Megan shot back. "State law is clear. The mineral estate is dominant. If you don't like the noise, pollution, and fire risk of a drilling rig outside your Gucci storefront, that is your problem, not mine." The courtroom erupted. Reporters hammered their keyboards. Donovan collapsed into his chair, face bloodless. He understood better than anyone. No retailer would lease space in a mall with an active drilling rig roaring at its center. His $500 million project had just become worthless scrap metal. Wayne, who moments ago had been dreaming of commissions, stared at Megan as if watching a corpse rise from the grave. Megan smiled coldly. "So, Mr. Donovan, do you want the house? Or do you want to negotiate?" The fall of the greedy. 1 hour later, in a sealed courthouse conference room, the air was suffocating with tension. Mr. Donovan, stripped of his arrogance, sat across from Megan, a Mont Blanc fountain pen trembling in his hand. $5 million, he hissed. "That's my final offer for that scrap of paper." Megan leaned back, fingers tracing the old map. You're mistaken. This isn't scrap paper. This is the safety valve to your $500 million project. I want. Donovan slammed the table and sprang up, but his attorney yanked him back down, whispering urgently, "If this leaks, the banks will pull funding by this afternoon. We'll lose everything." Grinding his teeth, face flushed with rage, Donovan finally signed the settlement agreement. The moment the ink dried, Wayne, silent in the corner until now, jumped up, eyes blazing. "$15 million! Meg, you did it! Under state law, we're still married. This is marital property. I get half. $7.5 million is mine." Megan turned to him. There was no emotion left in her eyes, only pity. She slid another document across the table. "Wrong, Wayne. If I sold the house, that would be marital property. But this money comes from inherited mineral rights. Under Pennsylvania law, inherited property remains separate as long as the spouse's name was never added. My grandfather left it to me. Me alone." She leaned forward, enunciating every word. "You will receive a single dollar. You leave with nothing, just as you came to me." Wayne went pale. He turned desperately to Donovan. "Sir, you have to help me." Furious over the loss, Donovan turned and slapped Wayne hard across the face. "Shut up, you idiot! You told me she didn't know the law. You cost me $15 million. You're fired, and I'm suing you for corporate fraud over those fake reports you filed. Get ready for prison." The conference room door opened. Megan walked out, leaving behind Wayne's screams and the collapse of men who believed money could buy everything. Spring on Maple Street, 6 months later. The brutal winter had passed. Snow melted into lush green lawns. The once deafening construction site was finished, but a miracle had occurred across the street. Megan never moved away. She used part of the $15 million to buy the abandoned houses nearby and restore them. A brand new oak sign stood proudly at the entrance. Buster's Haven Community Land Trust. Safe haven for Buster. Below it, smaller letters read, "Safe shelter and free legal support for women and children." In the sunlit courtyard, laughter filled the air. Women who had suffered abuse, single mothers once evicted like Megan, now planted flowers together. Children ran and played around a small bronze statue of Buster, seated proudly as a guardian. Megan stepped out of the management office. She wore a simple floral dress, her face radiant with life. She did not live as a reclusive millionaire behind iron gates. She chose to live within the community she built. An old bus pulled up at the gate. A young woman stepped off, carrying a torn bag, holding a small child, her eyes filled with the same fear and despair Megan once knew. Megan walked forward and opened the gate. "Don't be afraid," she smiled, taking the woman's hand. "You're safe here. We don't leave anyone behind." The camera rose high, a drone shot capturing Buster's Haven, green and vibrant, standing proudly beside Donovan's glittering but soulless mall. Megan's voice echoed calm and resolute. "They thought they could bury us under cold snow and court orders. They forgot one thing. We are seeds. When buried in darkness, that is not the end. That is when we grow strongest."